Currently, I'm on the list of template tags available in WordPress. All template tags are stored in 9 files, and those list of files can be found here. You basically find them inside the wp-includes directory. We're going to work our way down this list. To start things off, we'll explore the general tags. As you may expect, general tags are tags that don't necessarily fit in any other category. They're more general purpose, and so you'll find a lot of functions for various scenarios. The kind of functions you can expect to find are includes, login functions, blog info, archive, calendar, etc. The first set of tags are include tags. These are functions that take care of loading a template file inside another template file. We've actually explored every single one of these functions in the past 2 sections, so you already know what to expect out of these. Before we move forward, I want to highlight that the comments template function isn't listed here despite being a general tag. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to this function. If you were to scroll down to the source section, you'll see that the function is defined inside the comment-template.php file. Just be aware that some tags aren't defined in the same files as the other tags. Despite it not being defined in those files, this is a template tag. The next set of template tags are login tags. We haven't gone over authentication in this course, but we will soon. This is just a general overview. The first function is the WP login out function that will output a link to the login or logout pages depending on if the user is authenticated. The next 2 functions will provide the URL to the login or logout URLs. This is just in case you don't want to use the function above and have more control over your links. Then we have the login form function, which will just output a simple login form, followed by the lost password URL and register functions, which will output links to those pages. Lastly, we have the isUserLoggedIn function, which will return true or false if the user is logged in. Let's play around with some of these tags. Right now, I'm inside the experimental template. Inside the content area, I'm going to echo out the value returned by the function wp-login-URL. Let's go to our browser and refresh the page. As expected, we get the URL to the login page. Something worth noting is that this function doesn't check if we're logged in or not. Right now, I'm logged in, so I shouldn't be able to view this URL. If we want to let WordPress handle this, then we can go back to the editor and change the function to wp-login-out. This function doesn't need to be echoed out, so we can remove the echo statement. Save your changes and refresh the page. This function will take care of outputting the link while also surrounding it with HTML tags. A lot of this is very straightforward stuff. The next function is the blog info function. This function will return information about your site. There are 2 versions, which are the blog info and get blog info functions. Something worth highlighting is that you can only retrieve one value. The value returned depends on what you pass into the function. Here are some examples of what you can pass into the function. You can pass in the same values to both functions. The only difference is that the blog info function will echo out the value and the get blog info function will return the value. Right now, I'm on the documentation page for the blog info function. If you scroll down to the possible values section, then you'll find all the values you can get from this function. As you can see, we can grab information such as the name, URL, character set, etc. There is one thing I want to highlight about this function. If you scroll up, you'll find the changelog section. This function was introduced in WordPress version 0.71. It's been around for quite some time. When it was first introduced, there weren't a lot of ways to get certain values from the database. However, 5 major versions later, WordPress has introduced a plethora of functions. Scrolling back down, you'll see that WordPress recommends alternative functions to grab certain values. For example, the URL description states the following: displays the site address set in Settings General. This data is retrieved from the home record in the WP_options table. Consider echoing home URL function instead. There is no right or wrong answer here. It really boils down to preference. Whenever you use the blog info function, always check the documentation for alternative solutions. The next set of tags are archive tags. Archive tags are specifically for archive templates like categories, tags, and taxonomies. Apart from that, they can also be used outside of the loop, which can save you code and space. Despite their appearance, archive templates are one of the most complicated pieces of pages WordPress has. This is because you can archive a post by category, date, tag, taxonomy, etc. There's just so much information attached to a post. Because of this, archive tags are just as weird and complex. I'm back inside the experimental template. I'm going to comment out any code we have here. Then I'm going to call the function singlePostTitle. As you would expect, this will output the title of the current post. On top of that, you'll notice we're not inside a loop. Let's refresh the page and see what we get. The title of the post now appears here. That's great. I won't be able to show you all the archive template tags, but I do want to show you one thing. I'm going to open the category template for a moment. Inside the page title section, you'll find that we're using the template tags the archive title and the archive description. WordPress provides another function for displaying the category title, which is single cat title. Once you have that set, go back to your browser and view a category page. A small change has occurred. The text category does not appear before the name of the category. Other than that, everything else is the same. So at this point, you may be thinking, what's the point? What makes one function better than the other? Well, let's peek at the documentation for a second. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the archive title function. If you scroll down to the source code section, then you'll see that this function calls the get the archive title function. Before we check out this function, I want you to take note of the changelog section, which says this was introduced in version 4.1 of WordPress. This is important to note, and you'll see why in a moment. Scrolling down further, you'll find a section called Related Uses, which provides information about the functions used by this function. I'm going to click on the link for the Get the Archive Title function. This time, if you look at the source code, you'll see that there's way more going on. This function will check if the current page is a category, tag, and date archive. Taking a closer look, the single cat title function is called when the page is a category archive. That's very strange, but let's keep going down the rabbit hole to understand what's going on. Scrolling down to the Related Uses section, there should be a link for this function. Click on it. Two things worth noting on this page. First up is the function. If you call this function, then you'll see that it's just passing off the data onto another function called singleTermTitle. That's strange, because that's also a template tag listed on the general template tags file. Anyway, let's go to the Related Uses section once more and click the link to this function. Now this is the function that actually takes care of grabbing the data we want. WordPress goes through a lot of hurdles just to display a simple title, and that's what I want to highlight. On one hand, archives are very broad and therefore they're complex. A lot of checks have to be performed in order to grab the correct piece of information. On the other hand, this also shows that WordPress is not as organized as one may think. WordPress receives criticism for gluing code together. That's partially true. The reason we have the archive title function is because developers still had to add this logic to their templates. This made the code look sloppy and unorganized. That's why the archive title function was introduced recently despite all these functions being around for a while. Luckily, the team behind WordPress is working really hard to clean things up. It's starting to become clear which functions should be used. This is why we use the archive title function. It's because it takes care of checking for everything rather than us doing all the work. That was a lot to dig through, but hopefully you understand what's going on behind the scenes. If you were to go back to the list of template tags and clicked on the single tag title function, you'll see that this function does the exact same thing as single cat title. In my opinion, it's better to use the archive title function so you don't have to memorize various functions. I'm going to go back to my category template and reverse the changes. The next set of template tags are the calendar tags. Calendar tags aren't used much, so I won't be diving too much into them. The most commonly used template tag is the getCalendar function, which will output a calendar in a table format. Lastly, we have these other tags which don't necessarily belong to a specific category. None of these are worth going over, but you're more than free to check them out in the documentation. Strangely enough, the WP-enqueue-script function is also listed as a template tag. You already know what this function does, so no need to recap on this. Alright, that does it for the general tags. I highly recommend you explore these tags once you finish the course.